Hey everyone, Nick from ResoNix Sound Solutions here with another Porsche 911 GT3 sound treatment installation video. This one is actually not going to be on the installation itself, but the results that we got from the installation. So we have a ton of before and after measurements here that we are going to be going over and breaking down. Everything from highway driving, road driving, various parts of the road around town. But first I figured, maybe I explain how we even went about this. So the before measurements we took were, before I even touched anything on the vehicle. Nothing was removed, not a panel was touched, nothing. How the measurements were taken were via an Earthworks M23 measurement microphone that was secured to, I guess you can say, a pole, which was affixed to the rear parcel shelf, and the mic was extended to be just poking in between the two front seats. Maybe a little bit behind just so my elbow wouldn't hit it, but the microphone was pointing forward, which doesn't really matter since it's an omnidirectional microphone, but it was pretty much dead center of the vehicle. Now, how this translates to how a human perceives sound versus the microphone, it's really hard to say, but this definitely gives us a perfect reference to see the drop in frequencies or the drop in output over given frequencies. So the exact frequency response might not be what we hear, and we obviously can't tell what directions they sound like they're coming from, or what the noise exactly is, but we can perfectly see what the before and after gains or reductions were. So yeah, like I said, microphone mounted in the middle of the vehicle, right behind the middle of the two front seats, or the two only seats. And yeah, and then the after measurements were recorded the exact same way. So Earthworks M23 microphone into a Behringer microphone interface, which went right into my laptop, which we were recording via Room EQ Wizard's RTA feature, which we were doing. Here's all the settings that we used for it. I would show you how the averages run, but I don't have a measurement microphone hooked up right now, so it will not work properly. But yeah, we just took averages over a given time period on specific parts of a road at a very specific speed. I actually also have microphone recordings as well with the same exact microphone. So we will have, the next part of this video series is going to be the actual before and after recordings that are these measurements. Also, I would like to go over what these measurements are before we really dive into it. So this, for those who don't know, these are frequency response measurements that are taken with an RTA, a real-time analyzer. What a real-time analyzer does is it measures output amplitude over frequency. So on the x-axis we have frequency, on the y-axis we have amplitude. So instead of just one of those little handheld meters that shows you a decibel reading, this is able to do the same thing but over every single frequency. So a decibel meter will give you I like to call it a one-dimensional view on... So, Peter, what do you want? My cat's meowing at me. I don't know if you guys can hear this. Go, come on. I'm doing something. So a sound meter one of those handheld meters will give you what I like to refer to as a one-dimensional view of sound output. It will show you just the highest peak. So like in this case, it would tell you, oh, it is measuring 87.6 decibels, and not tell you anything else what's going on around it. An RTA is going to be able to show you everything. So if you have one area where a peak is not knocked down, or a frequency range that is completely eliminated, a handheld SPL meter is not going to show you that. So this helps us break down the entire frequency range, frequency by frequency, to see exactly what is going on. Think of it as many different SPL meters that are targeting different frequencies. And yeah, it's much better. I like to refer to this as a two-dimensional view of sound, while something like a waterfall graph, which we are not going to get into, it's actually not even applicable to this, would be like a three-dimensional view, and human hearing would be a four-dimensional view. So yeah, that's, I mean, that's not exactly what it is. That's just like how I like to explain it to people. So again, handheld SPL meter gives you one amplitude reading of the peak without telling you what that frequency is or what else is going on around it. An RTA, frequency response measurement, shows you amplitude over given frequencies. This waterfall graph will give you amplitude over given frequencies over given time, but again, not really usable in this situation. And human hearing will obviously be able to give you frequencies, amplitude, time, as well as like location. So our brain is going to be able to discern where the sound is coming from, and is it actually affecting things differently that, you know, a simple measurement like this is not going to be able to show you. So yeah, and that's where the next part of this video series is going to come in helpful. It is going to show you what the actual sound was. So stay tuned for that, but for now, let's get into the measurements. So let's get into breaking it down. I am going to clear all of these, and we'll start one by one. So Holt Drive. This is the street that my shop resides on. This was taken from the entrance of the storage unit complex to the second or the furthest away entrance of the ShopRite complex. So again, this is the before response. How this correlates to what the human hears, hard to really say, but it doesn't really matter for the measurement anyway, since we're just looking for a before and after reference. So as you can see, you know, the trend for all of these measurements is going to be the lower frequencies are much higher, and it tapers off as it goes higher in frequency. This is normal for a situation like this. You know, most of your road noise is going to be lower in frequency. You know, the engine, the tires, wind, you know, it's mostly going to be from very low frequencies, maybe up to like 150, 250 hertz area. But that's where the bulk of our noise resides. And then above 250 is where like a lot of the higher frequency, like, you know, harmonics of the wind noise and, you know, resonance and stuff like that all kind of reside up top as well. But the bulk of what you're hearing is going to be down low. But again, this is an RTA measurement. This doesn't measure perfectly flat to what we're hearing. It's going to be a gradual 3 dB per octave taper. So we could, you know, theoretically adjust this to be similar to what we hear, but again, there's no real point considering we're just measuring or comparing before and after to see the differences. So again, Holt Drive from the storage unit complex to the ShopRite entrance. This is the before, and this is the after. As you can see, you know, what we're really seeing, let's focus on the low frequencies first. Red is before, the purple is after. We don't really see much going on in the lower frequencies until we start hitting 100 hertz. Why? Hard to really say. I can't really say for sure, but you will definitely, again, get a chance to hear the difference with the recordings in the next video. So again, be sure to watch that after watching this so you can actually see the before and after, hear the before and after. But moving on from there, what really sticks out to me is the before. We have a lot of pretty aggressive swings in peaks here, but on the after, the peaks are much less, you know, they're much less dramatic. The dynamics aren't as drastic. This tells me that we are getting a benefit from the constrained layer damper, and a lot of this noise was coming from resonance. If it was a reduction in noise as a whole, that would tell me we're getting the benefits of the absorber, but frankly, absorbing noise down into the sub 100 hertz frequency range is very difficult. But, you know, seeing these peaks kind of smoothed out in this region tells me that, we are getting some benefits of the constrained layer damper reducing resonance of the body panels. Can't say for sure, but it's my educated guess. Moving on from there, above 100 hertz, again, we can see that these peaks are smoothing out. We do have a nice reduction in this region. Can't tell you what that's attributed to. And then moving on from here, again, all of these peaks are just smoothed out, which tells me these, 250 hertz and 370 hertz peaks were probably body panel resonance. Maybe it was from the rear parcel shelf or quarter panels. I can't really say for sure, or maybe even the doors. But all of these are smoothed out and we're not getting as much noise from body panel resonance. And then what we really notice after that is above 350 hertz, we're getting just a general, about a 5 dB reduction, everywhere above that. Why we have a little bit more in the upper frequencies, I don't know, but this is 6K and above. I can't even picture there being any automotive noise above these frequencies, so this might just be from something with the measurement that didn't go correctly. Can't say for certain, but everywhere above 350 hertz or so, minus a couple peaks here or there, is looking like a pretty substantial drop in output as a whole, whether that's tire noise or engine noise or wind noise. Again, can't really say, but we are noticing a total reduction, which is really nice. All right, moving on from here. The next was Filer's Lane from Walgreens to the Rose store, or I keep calling it the Rose store. There was like a flower shop there, but the street name is Rose or something of that sort, of Rosebud. Before is the green, after is the orange. This one was a pretty major reduction as a whole. Why we didn't get as much reduction on the Holt drive, I think I have a theory now that I'm kind of looking at it. My theory is kind of going to be Holt drive is loaded with potholes and cracks and bumps, while Filer's Lane is freshly paved to a degree. So I think on Holt drive, a lot of this lower noise is probably coming from just low frequency, like bumps in the road, just those tires hitting and causing very low frequency, sound. So it doesn't really make a difference no matter what treatment, because it's just a matter of the tires slamming into potholes and bumps and stuff like that. But as we go onto a smooth road, we're getting pretty significant reduction everywhere. And again, we're seeing reduction of big peaks pretty much everywhere except for, in this region. Again, what these after ones are attributed to is really hard to say, but we're getting about a 5 or 6 dB reduction in most frequency ranges, especially again, like above the 400 hertz area. We are getting 5 or 6 dB in reduction across the entire board after there, which that is huge. That is a huge amount of reduction, especially considering that in a car there are multiple sources of noise, whether it's, again, tires, wind, engine, exhaust, anything of that sort. When you have a reduction on an RTA, the RTA isn't able to decipher what the source of the noise is. So we're not looking at, oh yeah, this is the measurement of the tires and this is the measurement of the of the wind noise. We're just getting the sum of everything, and this reduction tells me that the entire sum of the noise was completely reduced by this much. And if any one of those components wasn't reduced, it would measure as a spike, kind of like this area, how it comes up. Maybe, there's a certain wind noise that we just weren't able to reduce, or a certain resonance peak that we weren't able to reduce. And this peaks up, but everywhere else it was like completely reduced, which is very impressive. But more so like down here in the lower frequency region, impressive, very impressive how much reduction we have in the lower frequencies. So let's move on from there. The next area of filers, we actually did a much longer measurement. This was from the traffic light all the way to, if I remember correctly, it was to the Marian Shrine. Yeah, it was the Marian Shrine, which is like a church, youth center. I don't know what it is, but it's a much longer measurement than the previous two. The previous two ones were maybe, a 10-second measurement. This one was more like a minute and a half, maybe a minute. But, we're getting a much more information. So it's going to be harder to really get in, a perfect apples to apples before and after, since there's more variance, other cars on the road, whether we're hitting the same spots in the road, hitting the same bumps or anything of that sort. But even then, we are still noticing a bunch of the lower frequency peaks smoothing out or even reductions. But again, everything above 400 hertz is just a consistent, in this case, 4 or 5 dB drop, which is huge. Let's move on from there. We have Filer's Lane again, this time from Reservoir Road to Algonquin Drive, which is, again, that's a pretty long stretch of road. That is about another minute's worth of recording. And this was also a freshly paved section of road. I should point out the traffic light to the Marian Shrine. This was an unpaved portion of that street. Why some portions of the street are paved and some aren't, I don't know. Our entire town is, frankly wondering the same thing, but anyways, this whole area completely paved, but is also a much longer measurement. And again, as you can see, these lower frequency peaks are once again completely smoothed out, which tells me we're not getting nearly as much body panel resonance, whether that's from the doors or from the rear parcel shelf or the quarter panels or the door panels or anything that we treated with constrained layer damper. This is what that is attributed to. Above that, where these peaks come from, I don't know. Maybe, applying this, obviously it changes the resonance properties, and you might have some areas where you cause a resonance, who knows? It's way too complicated to even get into discussing, theorizing about it. But everywhere else, going above 200 hertz, we have a significant reduction in overall noise. Again, 5, 6, 7 dB on average across the board above like 200 hertz. This is absolutely wild. So this was a paved road where we were doing 30, 35 miles an hour, something in that range. Again, hard to do a perfect apples to apples before comparison because there are obviously other cars on the road. I can't always perfectly control my speed if there's someone in front of me, but we tried our best to make it as good as we can. And just by looking at the low frequency before and after, the fact that it averages up pretty good, I would say we did a pretty good before and after, nailing the conditions to be equal. So let's move on from there. The next is Filer's Lane again, from the entrance of the church to the second entrance of the soccer field. This was a shorter measurement, but this was if I recall, this is an unpaved portion of Filer's Lane now. Again, and again, we have, it's funny because we're actually, I noticed that in the low frequency reduction doesn't really happen like the paved portions are. So it looks like everywhere where there's a rough road, you're not really getting, under 100 hertz, you're not really getting much reduction. But where you have paved roads, you're noticing a much smoother frequency response, which tells me we're able to notice those resonance reduction benefits more. But in the rougher roads, we can't really get a solid measurement because there is other noise, the bumps in the road hitting the tires, affecting this frequency range. So yeah, this is exactly what I mean by, just because many other noises were reduced, which we would be able to notice by ear, just having one noise overcome all of the other ones will make it as if there was no reduction, but that's not the way our brain and ears are going to be able to decipher it. Our brain is going to be able to pick out, oh, the tires are quieter. Oh, the doors are quieter. Oh, the exhaust drone from the rear, that is quieter. Our brain is able to actively pay attention to different noises at once and notice the benefits from, one of them being reduced or one of them being eliminated, versus this RTA measurement where it's unable to decipher the difference between them. So keep that in mind, and this will again really show on the recordings, which is in the next part of the video. So yeah, we do have a smoother frequency response in the lower frequencies, but the reduction isn't really there because, again, rougher road. But going above, again, we just have a smoother frequency response above 100 hertz, and then once we hit 300, we have that nice flat even reduction of about 5 or 6 dB across the entire board. I don't think I mentioned this before, but this is most likely coming from the ResoNix fiber mat installation that we did that is absorbing sound wherever we installed it, which was the doors, the fender liners, the rear parcel shelf area, the quarter panels, the area like where, I don't even know what this part would be called, but it's like the area where like the rear bumper kind of would be, or the firewall, the firewall, that's obviously what it's called. The firewall portion in the rear, treating that with ResoNix fiber mat is able to absorb the higher frequency sound so well, and we're getting such a nice reduction across the board. It's actually really impressive. I am personally impressed by how good of a job it's doing. So now we are getting into the fun stuff, the Palisades Parkway. Palisades Parkway is the local highway. That is the noisiest road on planet Earth, in my opinion. Not on planet Earth, obviously, but it is absolutely insane how loud this road is. In my personal car, 2019 Volvo S60R design, pretty damn quiet car. I have quiet tires. My whole car is sound treated. Even then, like driving on this road is like pretty daunting. Obviously, I could still have conversations in the car, like on this road, but in my previous car, my older Honda Civic that I had before this, you couldn't even have a conversation while driving on most parts of the Palisades Parkway. And I think the reason for that is the material it's made out of. It's made out of concrete, and the bumps in the road, it's just this very, very high frequency and even low frequency rumble and high pitched whine that you get from your tires, and it's just absolutely insane driving on this road. Anyone in the area can attest to this. So yeah, let's get into the measurement. Sorry, water break. Looking at the measurement, looking at the sub 100 hertz frequency range, again, we're mostly just getting a smoother response afterwards. This can be attributed to reduction of resonance, but above 100 hertz is where most of these benefits of our work is going to be realized. We're getting a nice reduction in the 100 to 200 hertz area. What this is from, I don't know. This low in frequency, probably resonance reduction. But again, above 400 hertz, we are just getting a nice, even, and it just drops like a cliff right there. It's like, boom, you just cut out a ton of noise from above 400 hertz, and we're getting, 4, 5, 6 dB across the board very consistently. And on the highway, this is huge. This is effectively eliminating high frequency, exhaust drone, wind noise, stuff like that. So this is, and even higher frequency harmonics from your tires. So this is, again, super impressive. As someone who has done many of these tests and, obviously has an understanding of how these products work and what these frequencies are, like, this is super impressive. And I'm very happy with how this turned out. And I don't know if I reiterated in this test, or I don't know if I mentioned this. In this test on the Palisades Parkway, the first run was from the exit 15 going, this is going northbound, the exit 15 sign, which is like heads up, like 3/4 of a mile ahead, you have exit 15, or maybe a mile ahead, exit 15. And then ended the measurement as soon as we passed the bridge. That's right before exit 15. The whole thing was done at an even 70 miles an hour in the same gear for both of these measurements. So I did, and both of them were in the left lane, which is the louder of the two. I actually tested that before and after. I did a few laps without recording and figured, okay, what are the louder of the two lanes? And I figured out the left lane was louder than the right. So we did both of these measurements in the left lane, and why it was louder, maybe it's just rougher in that part of the road, I don't know. So yeah, pretty even, pretty apples to apples. I didn't really have anyone on the road on the highway because I did this in the middle of the day on a weekday, and no one's really traveling up and down the Palisades. And you'll even be able to see in the recordings, the video of the recordings, that I have an open road, so I'm not really abiding by anyone else's speed or pace or anything like that. This was a pretty damn good apples to apples measurement, and again, very happy with how it came out. So let's move on to the next part of the Palisades. This was going southbound from exit 15 to exit 14, and going from the exit 14 sign to another exit 14 sign. A little bit shorter than the previous Palisades run, but still pretty significant. Again, did this in the left lane. We have a nice reduction in very low frequency. I don't know what this could be from or what this is attributed to. Couldn't really say. Resonance peaks are here or there, whether they're better or worse, it's really hard to say. This could just be, noise from the exhaust or tires, who knows. But again, as soon as you hit the 100 to 200 hertz area, we have this nice reduction. And then as soon as you hit the 400 hertz area, we have a perfectly even drop in noise, which again tells me we are getting reduction in tire noise, we are getting reduction in resonance, we are getting reduction in wind noise, we are getting reduction in engine noise, in exhaust noise. This tells me that everything, every single noise source had to be reduced in order for this to happen. And that is amazing. So yeah, this was, in my opinion, the most important. These two, Palisades measurements are the most important of the bunch, because this is where a majority of driving is going to be done and a majority of noise is going to be heard, and it's going to be the noisiest. So this came out really good that we are getting that much energy reduction above 400 hertz. It's just amazing, honestly. All right, moving on from there, we are going back now to the shop. So we are going on Filers again, but going the other direction. And we went from all the way from Reservoir Road all the way to the stoplight. This is probably two and a half minutes worth of driving, worth of recording. So again, before we have a pretty peaky low frequency performance, but we have a pretty damn smoothed out afterwards. Again, this tells me we're getting good results from the constrained layer damper application. We don't have too many peaks here, so we're getting a smoother, resonance profile. So there's not as much body panel resonance. And then we're getting some crisscross applesauce up here. What this can be, maybe it's something is, resonating differently. It shifted the peaks differently. I don't know whether it's audible, whether it's not, who knows? Who even knows if it's from resonance or tires or wind or exhaust, or just being on the other side of the road, with different potholes causing different profiles, who knows? But again, as soon as we hit the 300, 400 hertz area, we just get that nice even reduction across the entire thing. What these peaks are from, hard to say. Maybe hitting a pothole or two and causing just kind of spikes everywhere could be the cause of these as well. Again, since this is such a long road and such a long measurement, and that it's on a residential road, and I can't really control the other cars around me, Again, I try to do my best to do 30, 35 miles an hour in the same gear for both of these, but whether there are other cars driving by or there's, you know, a pothole that I hit in one and not in the other, it's hard to really say, but generally we have a much smoother low frequency range, and we have a noticeable huge reduction in, you know, in output above 300 or 400 hertz. So again, I'm very surprised at how well this worked. Moving on from there, going back down Holt Drive from the lighting building all the way to another shop. Yeah, you know, smoother, low frequency, and again, just reduction across the board, this time from 200 hertz and up. Again, what these peaks are for, hard to really say. Actually, this is, again, maybe a good time to say or talk about, you know, if, let's just say, you know, a car has a few sources of noise. It has tires, it has wind, it has exhaust, engine, and body panel resonance. Let's say those 5 noises are all different sources of noises. And let's just say we completely eliminate 4 of them, okay? Which ones they are doesn't matter. Let's say we eliminated all of them except for exhaust noise, okay? And, you know, the exhaust noise was completely untouched, and the exhaust noise was the loudest of the bunch across the board. This measurement wouldn't have changed like this. This reduction requires all noise sources to be reduced. So we can have noise sources that were reduced 15, 20, 30 dB, or even completely like eliminated. But if there is one noise source that is louder than the other, the RTA and sound meters are going to measure those peaks in these areas. So this tells me the loudest source was reduced by this much, and the other ones were reduced even more. So again, very impressive that it's even able to do this, that we're even able to get this much reduction and even measure it instead of just being able to tell with our ears. You know, usually getting measurements like this is very difficult because you can't really quantify them. You can't really get a good difference. Like honestly, I was expecting more differences like this over in the 10 to 20 hertz region. But we ended up getting 5, 6, 7 dB across the board above, you know, 300 hertz or so. And it's just mind-blowing. And out of all of these measurements, you know, this is the last of the bunch. And again, very impressed with how it came out. And, you know, stay tuned for our next video, which is going to be the last one. And it's going to be the before and after recordings, where you actually get to hear the before and after results. So stay tuned. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you for tuning in.